Hello all. For those of you that are just joining us, welcome to Creating the Perfect Monitoring Dashboard. This was created by Adam Kazes, Daniel Goldfeld, and Jeremy Valet. My name's Gwen. I'm part of the marketing team at Logz.io. And before we start, just wanted to tell you all some housekeeping items. So first of all, we've had a few questions already come in about recording this session. We will be recording it and sharing with everyone that has attended after the webinar. Lastly, we're going to keep the Q&A to at the very end. So if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the questions chat room or the general chat room, and we'll be fielding those and answering them at the end. So I am going to pass it off to Daniel, and he'll get things started.
Thank you, Gwen. Hey, everyone. I'm Daniel Goldfeld, and I'm part of the customer success team in our Tel Aviv office. I want to thank everyone for joining us in this customer success webinar. We have put together something very special for you, so we hope you'll really enjoy it and get some sense of how you can use Logz.io in order to monitor your environment. With me today, we have a special guest. We have Jeremy Valet, a valued technical champion from Babylon Health. Hi, Jeremy. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Can you tell us a bit about Babylon Health and your role in the organization?
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm a platform engineer at a company called Babylon Health, and Babylon Health's mission is to put an accessible and affordable healthcare services in the hands of every person on earth, which is quite a bold mission. And to do that, we use a combination of AI technologies and the best available medical expertise to deliver kind of like a 7 days a week, 24 hours a day access to digital health tools, personalized assessments, and also virtual doctor consultations. And we work with government health authorities, leading insurers, and businesses all across the world, which kind of means that we operate production clusters in different countries, which is operated by our platform engineering team. And for my role, I've spent the past few months working on one part of the platform, which is more specifically how to use cloud-native technologies in order to deliver to our researchers technologies to scale our training of AI systems at scale. If that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you, Jeremy. I think that we're all very keen to learn how Babylon Health is using the platform for monitoring. I would also like to mention Adam Kazes from the customer success team, who will be assisting here in the Tel Aviv office as well with any logistics and questions that you have in mind, and also Gwen in the Boston office that will also answer some of your questions further along the webinar. So before we go into our agenda for today, I want to remind everyone about our online resources for training, e-learning, and support. First, our documentation center. It can help you better understand how to configure our products and integrations, as well as see some real-life examples of how to configure your shippers and Logz.io account. Our Logz.io Academy. The Academy will assist you in ramping up and becoming an ELK master. By completing the different courses, you'll be able to gain Logz.io badges and certifications that you can then share with everyone in your organization or on your LinkedIn page. And the best part is that you can actually use it and do it in your own pace. And last but not least, our support is available 24/7, and it is a great resource in case you have any particular questions about Logz.io. All right, now let's dive into our agenda today. Firstly, we will discuss why should we use visualizations and dashboards. I will also walk you through building a nice dashboard that you will be able to use by the end of the webinar. This will be especially useful if you want to have a better understanding of your log volume within your accounts. I believe that you will really enjoy and find value during this session. Secondly, we will have a conversation with Jeremy. We will deep dive into how visualizations have helped him and the business he supports today. Plus, he will be sharing some advanced methods and automation that he has built himself and how they're currently used in the organization. Lastly, we will have some time for Q&A, and in case we're unable to get to all of your questions today, we will follow up by email. So just so you know, as you see, we're live. So we hope this will go smoothly and with no glitches. So why visualizations? Visualizations are also very efficient for troubleshooting, and they're a great representation of data that is easy to grasp to most. An engineer would like to look at something and immediately understand what is happening in his environment. And using the right visualizations can indicate if there is an issue or not, just by having an overview of all of our logs, their type, and who is generating them. Visualizations are also very efficient for troubleshooting. By using visualizations, it's easy for us to drill down to the time of the occurrence and narrow down to the relevant issue. It is easy to scale, so you can drill down or up within your visualization and increase or decrease the inspected time frame. This will give you the ability to quickly identify when the issue happened and when it ended. And of course, by defining different visualizations, you can aggregate multiple sources of data into one single dashboard. This will give you a clear real-time indication of the status of your system. So, in a nutshell, the goal of dashboards and visualizations is to help you gaining better visibility into your own data and spot trends and anomalies. Now, after we have covered the purpose and value of visualizations and dashboards, let's learn how we can build a nice monitoring dashboard. In this webinar, we'll build a dashboard that will represent the volume usage in our Logz.io account. This will help us monitoring that we have sufficient volume quota allocated for our daily needs. Track down frequent flyer apps, those are the apps that are generating most of the logs, and identify data usage trends. In order to get this dashboard up and running, we will first have to activate our account utilization metrics. Here you can see our Logz.io account. This can be done by clicking on the top right cogwheel icon, Settings, Manage Accounts, and now we can just click on the relevant account, open the advanced options, and tick the Save Account Utilization Metrics. For this webinar, we would like to have our metrics gathered every 10 minutes. However, you can change the frequency to 30 or 60 minutes just by using this dropdown. This step can be repeated for any other sub-account that you have defined in your account. Once we press the Apply button, a volume utilization log will be generated every 10 minutes within the relevant accounts, and we will be able to see the raw utilization logs in the Kibana Discover tab. We'll now navigate into the Kibana Discover tab and just open a saved search that we have in order to see those different logs. The utilization logs will always be generated with the Logz.io account utilization type with the following fields. Timestamp will indicate the timestamp of the log creation. The account ID is the account ID that we're monitoring. The account name is the account name of the account that we're monitoring. The expected utilization, EOD, is the expected volume utilization by the end of day in percentage. The expected volume in gigabytes, EOD, is the expected volume utilization by end of day in gigabytes. The grace capacity is the overage allowance for the account in percentage. The number of fields is the number of mapped fields within the account. The planned volume in gigabytes is the allocated quota for the account. The type is the actual log type. The utilization is the actual account utilization in percentage. And the volume in gigabytes is the actual account utilization in gigabytes. On a side note, those logs are already parsed. Keep in mind that in order to be able to create meaningful visualizations and dashboards, your logs should be parsed to different keys and values. The parsing can be done by applying parsing patterns on the shipper side, or better so, leveraging the Logz.io out-of-the-box parsing capabilities or our built-in parsing wizard. You can find more information about the parsing in the Getting Started with Parsing course in our Logz.io Academy. So, back to our main topic. In order to have a better representation of usage trends, we will change the time frame of our search to 7 days. This can be done by using the time picker here. And apply the saved search that shows us only the utilization logs within our main account and sub-accounts. This is the saved query. Now, after reviewing the raw logs, let's start visualizing the data to get a better monitoring of our daily logging usage. In order to build the visualization, we'll go to the Visualize tab and press the plus button. There are different types of visualizations that can accommodate different use cases and scenarios. As we're interested in monitoring trends and usage, today we will be using a line chart, a data table view, a pie chart, and an area chart visualization that we will then be combined into one monitoring dashboard. We'll start with the line visualization. As we already have a saved search, we don't have to rewrite it from scratch. We can just pick it from the list. So the line visualization will help us see our utilization over time. We can break it down by accounts and spot any spikes for overages in different accounts. So first, we're going to see all of our logs and the count of the logs over time by using the date histogram. Those are the different utilization logs that we're generating within our account. Now, we would like to separate this information in order to make it valuable for us so that we can actually understand if we're breaching our allocated plan. For this, we're going to change some of the aggregation in the metrics. The first one is going to be a max aggregation in the y-axis, and we're going to put it on plan, volume in gigabytes. This means we would like to see the actual allocated gigabytes for each and every one of the accounts. The second metric that we're going to use is, again, a max aggregation for the volume in gigabytes. This is the actual usage of each one of the accounts over time. Now, on top of that, we do want to separate the data and add an additional sub-bucket so that we can separate everything that we see based on the different accounts. For that, we're going to add a sub-bucket, We're going to use a term, and then we're going to use the account name field. By pressing the play button, we can now see the allocated data for the demo Logz.io account. We can see it's 5 gigabytes. We can see the allocated max for the security demo account, which is 1 gigabyte. And we can see the actual usage over time in which one of the accounts, demo Logz.io and the security demo accounts. We now have a great representation of our allowed log volume per account versus the actual usage in each one of the accounts over time. We're now going to save this visualization so that we can use it in our dashboard and move to our next resource. It is always good to give a clear name to each one of our visualizations so that we can then find them when we're going to add them to our dashboard. The more visualizations you're going to have, the more options you're going to have when you create a new dashboard, and it is important to be able to identify the right one. Now we're going to add an additional visualization. The next one will be the data table. The data table will be really helpful in case you have many sub-accounts. We can see a breakdown per account so we can make sure that we are properly dividing our data. For this, we're going to use our saved search once again. And we're going to add different metrics that we would like to see in a tabular view. The first metric we would like to see is the max aggregation of our planned volume in gigabytes. This is the actual defined threshold for each one of the accounts. The next aggregation we would like to use is a max aggregation on our volume in gigabytes. This is the actual usage of each one of the plans. The next aggregation we would like to use is actually an average aggregation, where we would like to be able to see the expected volume in gigabytes by the end of day. This will give us a clear indication if we're going to breach by the end of day or not. And we're going to add an additional metric, which is a max aggregation for the actual utilization, which represents the utilization in percentage in each one of the accounts. Now we see the total representation of all the different accounts. However, we would like to separate this based on the different accounts and sub-accounts. For this, we're going to use the split rows, terms, and once again, we're going to use the account name value. Voila, we can see the different utilization per account and sub-account. We can see the actual usage over time. We can see the statistics for the last 7 days. And we can understand if we're utilizing or overutilizing or underutilizing our accounts. With that being said, as this is a monitoring dashboard, we would like to monitor only today's usage. For that, we will apply an additional filter that will work on top of the actual timestamp of each one of the logs in order to make sure that the logs that are being checked for this visualization and used for this visualization are only from the beginning of the day until this point in time. Now we see the representation of the actual usage of our account from the beginning of the day until now, and each one of the different sub-accounts that we have in place. We're going to save this visualization as well so that we can use it within our dashboard. Again, we're going to use a clear naming pattern and convention so that we can actually find this when we're creating the dashboard. And now we're going to create a visualization that will give us a breakdown of our different log types. So again, we're going to go to Visualize, Plus, and now we're going to choose the pie chart. The pie chart will help us see how many logs are being generated by each log type and identify frequent flyers. Please note that in this visualization, I'm selecting my entire index instead of a saved search, as I'm interested in analyzing my entire data set and not only the utilization logs. Once I've created the pie chart, I can see the total amount of logs that are generated within my account. Now, I would like to split the slices so that I can see the different types. And for that, I'm going again to use the terms condition aggregation, and I'm going to use the type field. Now we can see all of my apps, and we can see how many logs are being generated by each one of my apps and being shipped into Logz.io. You can see that the frequent flyers that I have in my account are the Apache access logs that are generating about 28% of my logs, and the security demo logs that are generating about 27% of my entire log set. To make it a little bit more pretty, I'm going to go to options. I'm going to cancel the donut tick checkbox, and this is the pie chart that I would like to share and use within my dashboard. Once again, I'm going to save the dashboard. I'm going to use naming conventions so that I will be able to find the relevant visualization once I'm creating my dashboard. And I'm going to save this visualization as well. The last but not least is the area visualization. So once again, we're going to visualize, add area. This visualization will help me identifying the spread over time of each of the log types that I'm shipping to Logz.io. Once again, please note that in this visualization, I'm also selecting my entire index instead of saved searches, as I'm interested in analyzing my entire data set and not only the utilization logs. Once again, I have the total count of the logs that I have in my system. I will now spread them over time by using the date histogram aggregation. Now I can see the trends of all of my logs. I can see when all of my logs are trending. And now I can also add a sub bucket in order to differentiate those logs by the different types. So the sub aggregation will be terms again, and the field will be type. I'm going to run the visualization, and as you can see, I can now see the trends of the different apps over time within the last 7 days. I can identify the frequent flyer logs. I can see who's generating most of the logs at what time, and I can start troubleshooting any issues if I have them within my system. We're going to save this visualization as well. Again, we're going to use naming convention so that we'll be able to find this. And we're going to save the visualization. Now, In order to see all of the different visualizations in one place and be able to correlate all of the data, we're going to create a dashboard. For that, we're going to go into Dashboard tab, we're going to press the plus button, and we're going to use the Add button. Here, the naming convention will come into play. If you use the right naming convention, you will easily find the relevant visualizations that you have in your account, and you'll be able to add them into the dashboard. So now we're going to add the area, we're going to add the data line, we're going to add the data table, we're going to add the chart, and we're going to add the area chart into our dashboard. And voila, we have a beautiful monitoring dashboard with all of the visualizations that we have just created. We can see the trends over time. We can see if we're breaching. We can see our status today. We can see the different logs that are being generated in the system and their total amount within the entire count of all of the logs. And we can see the different log patterns or the different log trends based on application and based on time. This dashboard can be auto-refreshed every 5 minutes. It can be saved so that others can use it. And it can also be shared with other users. We can share them with a public link that they can access in order to see the status, or we can share them with a regular link that they can use in order to log into the system first. So just to sum everything up, we've created 4 different visualizations and we brought them into one beautiful dashboard. And now we have a very clear overview of what's going on in our system and how we're utilizing the different quotas in our different accounts and sub-accounts. For everyone who don't want to create this from scratch, I'm happy to tell you that we actually have in place those dashboards already pre-built within our LCAPS feature. You can go into LCAPS and you can go to Utilization, and you'll be able to install the dashboard or a similar dashboard directly into your account once you start generating the utilization logs through every one of the accounts and sub-accounts. So you don't have to create everything that we did from scratch. You can just leverage the pre-made resources that we have within our platform. That's it. We have a beautiful dashboard, and Gwen, you can take it away.
Great, thank you so much, Daniel. I think we're going to have a room full of experts in dashboards by the end of the presentation. Let's move to Jeremy and see how others are using the platform. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today. And as you've already mentioned, you're a platform engineer for an amazing company. During today's session, I was hoping you could answer a few questions before you start your presentation.
Sure.
Is that okay? Wonderful. So for how long have you been a platform engineer?
So for me, it has been a bit over 2 years now.
Oh, wow. And what are your day-to-day responsibilities?
So there are several responsibilities as a platform engineer at Babylon. The first thing is to obviously make sure that the platform that we are building stays up and is stable across all of our data centers. But also we are trying to support our developers so that they can work with the best tools available and in the best condition to develop new applications. We also try to build applications which will improve the scale and the speed of our services. And we need to make sure that we are working in compliance with healthcare regulations. So there's all of these components to take into account. And as I said before, more recently, I've been working specifically on a platform for our researchers, AI researchers at Babylon. And the goal is to give them the right set of tools so that we can have research and engineering teams to be more efficient when it comes to building global AI systems.
Oh, very interesting. Next, before Logz.io, how did things work? The topic today is visualizations and dashboards. So did you use those prior to using our solution?
Yes, we did. So like many startups, we had an elk stack that the platform team was managing. And the problem we started facing was that as the company grew, we're onboarding a lot of new developers and we're building many microservices and bringing them to the platform. So what happened was that our log volume became massive and we started spending a lot of time maintaining our log stack. Because as you probably know, maintaining an elk stack at scale is very challenging.
Yeah. So judging from that, you guys really needed a logs analytic tool just to save time in general. Could you let us know the reason why you chose Logz.io over some of the other providers?
Sure. I mean, we use log analytics tool because for us, logs are the source of truth of all of our systems. So they are really critical to understanding how our infrastructure work and our application works and behave in live environments. You can get like previous state of your system, current state, and if you really do it properly, you can also have insight about how your system will behave in the future. So we decided to go with Logz.io because it was not just like a hosted elk stack for us. You can see that the logs are first-class citizen, and the product really wants to make you like it wants you to make sense of all this information. And one thing that we got when we started using Logz.io was the customer support for us was really important. As I mentioned, we have over 300 developers, and it's good to know that if at any time a developer is using the dashboard and needs some help, then you can start a chat directly from the Kibana app and talk to support. So I think for us, it was a really good feature on top of all of what Logz.io already provides.
Yeah, very interesting. We definitely hear all those reasons pretty regularly. I don't want to cut in too much time of your presentation, so I'll pass off the screen to you. That's okay.
Sure.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. Cool. Okay, so about visualization, the first thing to show is that as soon as you start sending logs to any system like elk stack or Logz.io, you can already use very simple visualizations to make sense of all that data. So here, for example, I'm showing all of my application logs over time and putting that in a time date histogram. And as you can see, you can already start seeing some patterns going up and down, which represent the traffic going into your application. Now imagine if my system is, for example, an application running on 2 different servers with a load balancer in front of it. When I get logs from that system, I get the actual content of the log, but I get also some metadata, such as the node it ran on. So one thing I can super easily do is just splitting it by host. So you can see here now that my same data has 2 different colors, host A and host B. And just from this information, you can see that the traffic looks to be, seems to be pretty shared evenly, 50-50. So that's already a good insight to get from your logs, and you really don't need any, like, you don't need much time to build this kind of dashboard. And something that happened to us a long time ago was that we started to see something like this, where just by visualizing what host the information would come from, we started seeing that one host was stopping to report any kind of activity. So we didn't have any alert for this back then, so we realized that something was wrong just by looking into this. And I think visualization to us is something that can give you information where you didn't specifically set up alerts before. So when you start seeing this, then you can set up an alert in the future. But the kind of information you didn't think about is great to see in a visualization. So that's one example. Another one is this kind of example. So imagine if you set up your 2 hosts to report to Logz.io. you start splitting it by host, and you see that actually, even though the hosts are supposed to be load balanced, you get 75% of the traffic on one host and 25% on the other. So something's probably wrong with one of your hosts. And they are both answering to traffic. So in theory, both of your hosts are up and running. It's just that one of them seems to be slower or something to answer queries. So this is things that are very hard to get out of an automated alert at first. But when you start visualizing it, you can see this kind of information. Now at Babylon, we have 5 different data centers. We have 200 and plus microservices. I think we are approaching 250 microservices, and we have over 300 developers. So we have a lot of things to collect data from. And we do collect logs from our applications, obviously, but we collect also logs from our infrastructure components, such as CloudFront, Nginx, Kubernetes, where all of our applications run. And that produces a huge amount of logs every day. And visualizations are a great way for us to make sense of all of that data. So if you take CloudFront, for example, this is, again, very simple histogram where you can see the log over time. You can see the traffic that's going into your services, and you can see how it's doing. So if you start seeing something going up rapidly, then you might want to have a closer look at your vital application just to make sure that they cope with the load. And if you store the data long enough, you can visualize how your traffic is shaped, for example, night versus day, or weekday versus weekends. All that kind of information becomes accessible to you very easily. And CloudFront being a structured log, which means that every single information going through those logs can be actually parsed and queried in Logz.io or an else stack. You can make even more insight out of this data. So for example, you can take the same histogram and you can filter it by HTTP code. As you can see here, most of the system is healthy, but you see that at some point there's some errors happening, and that that gives you a good idea of, again, whether or not your systems are healthy, because this might not be reported in an alert, but actually when you look at the traffic, you can see that some errors are happening. But what's really interesting is when you start combining logs from different components. So for example, at Babylon, we have an API gateway, and that API gateway is going to route the traffic to all of our different HTTP APIs, so all of our applications. And we get the logs from our applications, but also from this API gateway. And those logs are structured, which means that I can also query them in a very efficient manner. So for example, I can ask questions like, give me all the APIs that return a 500 error code in the last hour, and then get the average latency for them, and maybe split the results by methods, so get, post, etc. That gives you a lot of insights. It also allows you to create some visualization per API, which is something that you can do here. We actually create a dashboard for all of our applications at Babylon. And this is kind of like one schema example of that dashboard, if you will. You can see the live traffic. You can see how it's split between good error codes and bad error codes. And just under it, you can see the logs. And the first visualization, which is the histogram, comes from the API gateway. And the logs on the bottom come from the application. But since they are time-based, then they can show for a specific time, let's say the last hour. You can know that the logs that you see on the bottom and the traffic that you see on top are linked. So they show you exactly what happens at that specific time. Which means that if I want to investigate an error, I can just select the time and zoom in, basically, which is what I can do. So I can see here, we've got some 500 errors, and if I zoom in on that time frame, I'll get a bit more details, and I can see that actually these errors correspond to what I see on the log where I have an error happening. So this is like a pure theory example, but you get the idea. Just because they are linked with the time, then it makes it super easy to combine two different sets of logs into something very useful. And so at Babylon, we have, as I said, 200 plus microservices, and we create a dashboard like this for all of them and for all of our environments. So those dashboards contain a histogram with all the API calls. We have the latency over time. We have a pie chart showing the ratio of the response codes, and finally we have the application logs. But as you can imagine, with 200 microservices and 5 different data centers and even more environments, that's a lot of dashboards to create. So at Babylon, actually, we use over 1,000 dashboards on Kibana, and we use over 5,000 visualizations, which is quite a massive amount of visualizations to create. But thankfully, we don't create them by hand. So what we did is we created a little script that synchronizes with Logz.io and creates those dashboards. And the way it works is kind of like this. So at Babylon, we store all of our applications in Git. So we have a list of all of our applications, and we can know many things about them. For example, are they an API or not? And if they are an API, we add them to our list of dashboards to create. And we have a script that is basically going to take a template of a dashboard and add the information about each application that we have in our list, and then talk to the Logz.io API so that the dashboard is created. And we have that script that runs continuously every time that we change something to our source of truth, which is stored on GitHub. And every, say, 5 minutes, we just make sure that all the applications that we have in our system have a corresponding dashboard on Logz.io. And that's super powerful because as a developer, I just created a new microservice that I deployed in my dev environment. And actually, a few minutes later, I already have a dashboard which contains the API calls. It shows me where the errors are, shows me the latency, and there was nothing to be done from the developer itself. So it can be pretty useful for us. And the way it works in details is we have, if you've used Kibana before, you can you know that once you create a dashboard, which is a list of visualization, you can actually export it, and it will give you a JSON file. If you look at this JSON file, you can see that it's actually very easy to modify if you want to. So what we did is we created one dashboard for one application, which is an HTTP API. And then based on that JSON file that we downloaded, we created a template. And then we just apply that template to all of our applications. And that creates a JSON file or a JSON object per microservice. And then we just push that all the way up to Logz.io. And in a few seconds, we have our 1,000 dashboards up and running, and we can start using them. So I really encourage people to have a look at the API as well. It's something that we use a lot, and it saved us, as you can imagine, a lot of time creating all of these visualizations. And that's it for me. I'll hand it over back to you.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I'm just curious then, what would be the impact to you or your team and the company as well if you lose this visibility? Would you tie this to a real business situation that you had before?
Yeah, so that would be, I mean, obviously the impact would be pretty big. We use those kind of dashboards pretty much every day. Actually, as a matter of fact, something that if I want me to tie it to a real business situation, one day, it was pretty early on. Actually, we weren't using Logz.io yet. We were using our own L stack, but still, the same applies. Our company got mentioned in the TV news, and suddenly our traffic kind of blew up. We had a dashboard that was showing all of our most vital APIs, and you could see the traffic over time. So we started seeing the traffic going up and up and up. And suddenly we started seeing some red on some of the APIs. So we were able to actually look at this live and figure out exactly what kind of application needed scaling, because we needed to answer this very fast. And our auto-scaling capabilities were not able to cope as fast as the load that was coming. So we were able, just from these visualizations, to understand exactly what we needed to scale first, and we scaled accordingly. So it's just to show how important it is for us to keep having this kind of visualization.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's very interesting. Any closing thoughts or tips you want to share with our listeners today?
Sure. So one thing I always say to people is try to bring some structure into your logs. So what we do at Babylon, for example, is we advise developers to switch the format to inline JSON, which means that when they get sent to an ELK stack, they will be parsed automatically, which means that you can actually filter your logs and make even more sense out of them. But in general, make sure that you combine your application logs and infrastructure logs, because you'll see some things that you didn't really expect, and obviously automate as much as you can, because that will always pay off.
Cool. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for your time and also sharing your experience with us as well. By the way, everybody, Jeremy will be checking around. We'll be sticking around for the Q&A in case you have any additional questions. Let's do a quick summary before we move to the Q&A section. So just to sum everything up, we've discussed visualizations and dashboards and why it's better to use visualizations and dashboards to identify different trends in your data. We've created a simple monitoring dashboard that gives you the ability to actually monitor the usage of your system. And Jeremy told us how companies can actually leverage Logz.io or regular ELK stack in order to identify different trends, and how you can leverage the visualizations and dashboards and use different automations in order to basically accommodate those monitoring needs. So I think we're ready to move to our Q&A section. Gwen, I think you'll take the lead here.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you both so much. What a wonderful webinar. So we're going to move to Q&A now. I have a few that kind of came through as the webinar happened, so we'll start with those. And if anyone wants to add a question in the chat, please feel free to. Okay, first question, and this is going to be for both of you. What do we need to have in order to create visualizations?
So I think I'll take this one. The most important part, as Jeremy mentioned in his tips, is actually to have the data parsed. So you have to have a very clear logging convention so that you'll be able to get the different values in the different keys, so that then you'll be able to create those different visualization and trends. If you're going to send the logs as one-liners within the message field, it will be harder for you to visualize the different trends and identify the relevant values within your log lines that you want to monitor in those dashboards.
Very interesting. Okay, next question. And again, either of you are welcome to answer this. Can we visualize data from separate sub-accounts in one dashboard?
Yeah, I'll answer this one as well. So this is more of a Logz.io capability. Logz.io gives you the ability to have a main account and different sub-accounts within the main account. So you can actually search all of the data in the sub-accounts from the main account if you like. So any visualization or dashboard you'll generate on the main account, you can also use for all of the sub-accounts, or you can actually correlate the data from the different sub-accounts or collect the data from the different sub-accounts within the main account and show it in one very clear visualization and dashboard.
Okay, interesting. Okay, next question is specifically for Jeremy. Why did you move to a managed ELK stack instead of using the regular stack?
So the reason why we moved was basically we started getting a lot of data, about 300 gigabytes of logs every day, and we were managing that stack. But at the end of the day, managing logs is not really our core business, at all. So we decided it would be better to actually have someone else taking care of that for us. And so we started having a look at what we could get from other people. So I think again, like we had many kind of possibilities, but the fact that we found a tool that can be like, you know, log centric and putting logs as the first class citizen was very important to us. We didn't just want someone else to manage an elk stack for us. It had to bring more functionalities. And obviously at the time we were also supporting a lot of developers into that. So having a company that could, or a product that could help us take some of that load of answering questions about how to create a visualization or how to create a dashboard was something that was important to us, which is why we decided to switch. But yeah, at the end of the day, you know, we are not in the business of managing elk stacks. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, something that we've heard quite a few times working at Logz.io. Last question. So sorry, everyone, we're running low on time. This one is also for Jeremy. Do you have a dedicated ELK engineer, or is it being used by everyone when an issue happens?
We do have people that kind of like try to make sure that everyone gets the best out of elk. But no, every developer has an account and can just log in and have a look at the logs of their applications. So we really want all of our developers to access this and make sense of that data. So we try to train all of our engineers to use Logz.io, and we make sure that every team is empowered on this. So we don't have like some kind of like central person or team that look at the dashboard all day. We really want to make the developers be aware of all of this.
Wow. So we're going to have to close. Apologies to everyone. I'm sure we could talk about dashboards all day, but we've got to get Daniel and Jeremy's day moving. So thank you all for joining. Feel free to send any follow-up questions. We'll add contact info in the email along with the recording of the webinar. And just so you're all aware, make sure to join us for our next webinar, June 26th. We'll be discussing log management at scale with ELK. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.